It's for me an honor to open this extremely important conference, looking at the title, at the name of the conference. I never believed that in Brussels we can have a debate under the name "Delegitimization of Israel, the acceptable face of anti-Semitism." Is an extremely exciting name, and I hope at the end of this debate we'll have a conclusion if the anti-Semitism have an acceptable face. I will not start with the conclusion anyway. Dear Minister, dear High Representatives, dear colleagues, I am honored to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to co-host and open this conference on the fight against anti-Semitism. My colleagues, Mrs. Anna Mitchell-Asimakopoulou and Mrs. Anna Fotiga, will continue the tradition of welcoming our guest today. Rabbi Menahem Margolin will talk about the anti-Semitism in Europe in relation to Israel's situation. I am very pleased to have with us today Minister Gilad Erdan, who will present the results of the governmental report on anti-Semitism and BDS movement. It is a key debate regarding BDS movement. His presentation will be followed by intervention of Mrs. Katharina von Schnurbein, the European Commission Coordinator on combating anti-Semitism, and on the end, but not the last, Mr. Elan Carr, United States Special Envoy for monitoring and combating anti-Semitism. Our speakers will share tremendous experts and practical knowledge, advocating the need to effectively combat the anti-Semitism at EU and international level. It is important indeed for all of us to understand the challenges of the Jewish community, these challenges that nowadays sadly reflect an escalation of the anti-Semitism at global level. We can see it on the newspaper's front page, on the social media, or on the TV. I expect during this conference a big support for continuing the fight against anti-Semitism, because our Europe is built on the values of respect for human dignity, human rights, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. We need to be high representatives of these values. The Jewish community counts on us, and it is our responsibility to stand up against anti-Semitism, protecting the European Union diversity and the European way of life. It is our mission to debate and frame politics that fight anti-Semitism in a sustainable way. The European Parliament is the good place to fight anti-Semitism, a global threat to our democracy that reminds us about our obligation to protect the diversity of Jewish culture and its contribution to our Europe. In June 2017, the European Parliament adopted a resolution endorsing the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism. The European Parliament called on European member states to endorse and apply this definition. I am proud to say that Romania has legally adopted the definition. Last week in Strasbourg, we voted for a resolution on 18th commemoration of the beginning of the Second World War and on the importance of European remembrance for the future of Europe. We strongly condemned any manifestation of totalitarian ideologies such as Nazism and Stalinism, and we called on the member state to guarantee that such crimes will never repeat again in Europe. This week is the Anti-Racism and Diversity Week in European Parliament, which mainly events going on, our conference included. It is a good moment to have a wide view on the actions to combat anti-Semitism and to get feedback directly from Jewish guests. I wish you a very successful conference that stimulates both discussions and actions, and for our guests a pleasant stay in Brussels. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Michela Simakopoulou, and I am a member of this parliament representing Greece for the EPP. It's my pleasure for this to be the first event that I am co-hosting with the esteemed colleagues here today. And I would like to thank my colleagues who are here today, gracing with their presence and honoring us. Thank you to the Rabbi. Thank you to the European Jewish Association. Thank you particularly to Ruth Escalopoulou-Isaac, who has been instrumental in putting together this event. I'm delighted that we have with us today, and it is our great honor, Minister, that you are here with us, Minister Erban, the special envoys. And can you hear me? Yes, special envoys. And I'm very, very pleased to see that so many of you are gathered here today, because this is an era where anti-Semitism acts are increasing all over the world at alarming rates. And I think we all share, as our presence here today declares, the urgent responsibility of uniting against discrimination, against racism, against xenophobia. The rejection of intolerance is at the heart of our union. It is something that transcends political ideology, and it is, in fact, an instrumental part of our European way of life. My country, Greece, has had a long-standing multi-level relationship with Israel. In fact, the father of our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the late Konstantinos Mitsotakis, was the one who recognized the State of Israel back in May of 1990, a few days after he became Prime Minister, when Greece was the only country in the EEC that had not recognized Israel. On January 24, 1994, the Hellenic Parliament recognized January 27th as the day of remembrance of the Greek Jewish martyrs. And as you know, the Jewish communities in Greece are some of the oldest communities in duration and continuity in Europe. Jews have lived in Greece since the 3rd century BC. With communities in Athens, in Zakynthos, in Corfu, in Ioannina, in Kastoria, in Rhodes, in Volos, experienced extreme suffering and were almost completely destroyed during the Holocaust. In fact, I used to represent from the region of Epiros, the town of Ioannina. The town of Ioannina, where I was also deputy mayor, was the capital of Roman Judaism. On March 25, 1944, 1,850 people were arrested and taken to Auschwitz, and only 163 returned. This is now a very small Jewish community, but we are proud that our city has recently elected the first Jewish mayor in all of Greece. I myself am of Jewish descent, though now I am a Christian. And I come from this prefecture, and I'm very proud of this event, which I wanted to mention here today. Nowadays, anti-Semitism has taken new and unforeseen forms. this over the last decades. I therefore heartily welcome the Israeli government's report reviewing this online content of the BDS organization, and I'm looking forward to hearing this. On our side, I can tell you that the Greek government will continue the fight against anti-Semitism, and it's my pleasure here today, and allow me to mention that the former Deputy Minister of Justice, Mr. Kostas Karagounis, is with us today. He was the minister who, under Prime Minister Antonis Samaras, was instrumental in passing our law, which we will talk about, our Greek Parliament law against anti-Semitism. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for being here. And I give the floor Minister Fotyga, who will also rapporteur the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my real pleasure to co-host this event together with President Traian Băsescu, former President of Romania, and our dear friend Anna Michel Asimapoulou, who is a new member of the European Parliament, but as you can see, very active one already. So my congratulations to both of you. Naturally, it is pleasure and privilege to host Minister Gilad Erdan, distinguished representatives, Mrs. Katarina von Schnurbein, who represents the EU as the coordinator for anti-Semitism, and we have also Mr. Ilan Carr, who is the representative of State Department of the U.S., dealing with combating anti-Semitism. I represent the ECR political group today, political group that is politically linked as well to Likud, so party of Minister Gilad Erdan. Allow me just two personal remarks, because before I introduce properly Minister Gilad Erdan. Actually, a few years ago, I participated. I wouldn't name exact capital of Western Europe, but I participated in a small seminar discussing with distinguished representatives of media, with absolutely mainstream great media, European media. And I heard a remark that maybe we should refrain from penalizing Holocaust denial. For me, being a Pole, it was something actually difficult to perceive. Even with my whole experience, both government experience, president's chancellery experience, long-standing European Parliament experience, it was something new, showing changes, wind of changes, whatever, how to deal with this. In Poland, yes, it was, we lived in the marked by, our lives were marked by Auschwitz. Many of us actually were led there as children with our parents. I'm not Jewish by descent, yet it is so deeply rooted within a part of culture, of general education and culture, that even talking about withdrawal from Holocaust denial was something really very strange. Second World War was a real nightmare for all of us, in particular Jews living on Polish territory, but also for us Poles. My grandfather, my uncle perished in German prisons during the Second World War. They lost their lives. So whole family, as many Polish families, felt this really deeply. And therefore, I would like to simply, I wanted to talk about this. And secondly, there was second thought, actually. How to assess BDS? I'm absolutely against this motion. See, for many reasons that I wanted to recapitulate, but how to stay concise, being a person who openly supported sanctions against Poland during Solidarność time. While we stayed, I was part of opposition, combating communist regime, supporting combat against communist regime, and very much supporting sanctions against Poland. What's the difference? There is obvious difference in this. Now I'm a person dealing with security and defense. And clearly, openly, it is not only a perception of ECR, but I think that majority, mainstream of the European Parliament is absolutely sure that Israel is actually the only obvious democracy in the Middle East. It is our ally in many issues. Now, assisting both organizations, NATO and EU, that we are so willing to see cooperation between in combating our vital threats. Actually, it was time, and now we live in really time of turmoil, with many changes coming during our lifetime rapidly. It was time of, I would say, maybe silent cooperation between Israel and Iran during Shah's regime. And what happened? Sometime later, Iran became a life threat, to existential threat to Israel. Now we tend to understand it probably slightly more than we used to. Some of us earlier, like myself, but some of us, I think, that start to see the obvious threat to a peaceful existence of all our nations. And now there are some experts saying that BDS started to be this kind of existential threat to Israel. When we consider a country as our ally, partner, and important party in our common endeavors, it is not security-wise assessment. Actually, all sectors of relationship, like cultural, sports, trade, other sectors, are to enhance this cooperation. We cannot just separate those things. So, therefore, I consider BDS as particularly vicious also to our aims. Without much ado, I would like to give the floor now to Minister Gilad Erdan, who is extremely experienced member of the Israeli government, serving as Minister for Strategic Affairs, but much earlier, as far as I know, you started as leader of Likud Youth. and serving also so many portfolios, so environmental protection and information.
That's true.
Actually, it is even difficult for me to enumerate all these functions. So one of the most experienced politicians within the cabinet of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, also long-standing Knesset representative, elected many times to the Parliament of Israel, chairing committees. So without much ado, I'd like to give the floor, Minister, to you, Minister Gilad Erdan.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament and former Minister Fotiga, for your kind words. Member of Parliament Basescu and former President, Member of Parliament Asimakopoulou, my friend. Thank you so much for your friendship and for all that you do to combat anti-Semitism and strengthen EU and Israel ties. Thank you very much. European Commissioner, Coordinator von Schnurbein, US Special Envoy, Carr, Ambassador Leshnoyar, and distinguished ambassadors which are here, and of course everyone who came here from all parts of Europe, and you, my friend Rabbi Margolin, thank you for organizing this important event. Friends, imagine that you're a student in Germany in the 1930s. As you walk down the street, read the newspaper, go to class, you are bombarded by anti-Semitic propaganda. Jews are evil. Jews spread death and cause wars. By the way, those are grenades. Jewish money controls foreign governments. So, if you were exposed to that content, it is not surprising that you would soon begin to develop anti-Semitic attitudes. If you kept being exposed to this anti-Jewish propaganda, those anti-Semitic attitudes would eventually lead you to anti-Semitic violence. Well, I'm sorry to say, this propaganda isn't from 1930s Germany. It is being spread today, again in Europe. And by who? By the BDS campaign. In fact, this first image was awarded a cash prize by Badil, not this one. Can you show the one? No, the first one. Yes, this is the whole picture. In fact, this first image was awarded a cash prize by Badil, a Palestinian BDS group funded by European governments. That's right. This hate is being funded by European taxpayers like you. Now, some might say that these are just words, just images. But the long, dark history of anti-Semitism teaches that what begins with words, incitement, and propaganda ends with attacks against Jews. As the grandchild of survivors of Auschwitz who rebuilt their lives in the State of Israel, I am here before you to declare that we will not forget the lessons of the Holocaust. We will never forget that anti-Semitic speech quickly turns into anti-Semitic acts. 75 years after the Allies liberated Europe from the Nazis, we are sitting here in the European Parliament and witnessing anti-Semitic acts increase across Europe. In 2018 alone, there were 387 violent anti-Semitic attacks against Jews in the West, a 13% rise. This is just the number of attacks that were actually reported. The real number is much higher. In 2018, Jews are still being killed in Europe just because they are Jews. There were 68 violent attacks in the UK, 35 attacks in France, the same number in Germany, and 19 attacks right here in Belgium. Friends, this is not the 1930s. This is 2019. Never again is now. Now is the time to act. While the anti-Semitism washing across Europe comes from three main sources, the far right, the far left, and radical Islamists, far-right anti-Semitism is still largely rejected by mainstream society. However, the BDS anti-Semitism of the far left, which goes hand in hand with Islamic anti-Semitism, has not been rejected by the mainstream. It has managed to mask